What's up YouTube, Dal here from Zephyr War Games, and today I'm bringing you a video that a lot of you have been requesting, and that is test hand combos with DDDs. Now I am by no means the master of this deck. Joe is obviously amongst us the better one of the two, and also if you want to see some really cool DDD videos, check out Yugioh on YouTube as well. That's where Joe gets a lot of his inspiration. However, this deck has started to get a lot of hype thanks to pack and of course the new support. The new support is insanely good. So I did get a couple of requests to do a test hand combo video for this deck. If you do like this and you get it to at least 50 likes in the first 24 hours, I will bring you the deck list as well, so you can kind of put something together yourself, trial it out and give it a go. It is a really cool deck, and hopefully we're going to get reprints and upgrades in Ghosts from the Past too. So with all of that out of the way, after you have smashed that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribed, and I have cut the deck, we will start with our opening hand of 5 being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's actually a cracked hand, which is crazy good. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with this deck. There is what I would say would be the first combo route you go for, if you have it available to you, is the Baroness play. Now you've got to keep in mind that when you bring out Gilgamesh, it locks you into DDDs, and when you bring out, or when you special summon Orpheus, it locks you into Fiends. So there's a lot of stuff that does limit your plays, so you do have to be very, very careful in what you do and how you decide to do it. So with this particular hand, I'm going to show you the Baron play. There's also a play that lets you win during time, but rather than showing you very specific combos, I will show you the test hands of it, the consistency of the deck, how it plays, and what different options you have depending on what you get. So with this one, we're going to go with the Baron hand, and with the Baron hand, what you need is you need Griffin, Swirl, and then any other DDD, and that will give you the Baron play. So starting with that, we're going to activate Swirl Slime's effect in hand, and we're going to fuse with itself and Griffin. And that is going to let us go into our Genghis. You're then going to use the Swirl Slime's effect in grave to banish itself to special a DD from hand. Now, with this particular hand, obviously we get a little bit better because we've opened up stuff like Kepler, technically Thomas and Ragnarok as well. But in this one, I'm actually going to summon down the Kepler because then it basically gives me a free search of everything else that I need going forward, which in this particular route, I will be going for the Dark Contract with the Gate. On top of that as well, you can also chain High Flame King or Flame King's effect to bring back the Griffin, which again is really, really important, because Griffin has the effect that if it is summoned from the graveyard, you get to add a DD card. So because we're going for the Baron play, I'm actually going to add the Orpheus. If we wasn't going for the Baron play, you'd actually add Headhunt. I mean, you could do it the other way as well. You could still add Headhunt and then use Dark Contract to get you the Orpheus. But I'm going to try and go a little bit further with my particular plays and kind of see where I can go. So off of the Contract, I actually want to add the Copernicus. So again, this is where the deck is very, very, like, there's a lot of different routes where you could take it. So you really need to learn the combos, know what you can do, and then you need to practice the different variations and options that you have. So we've pretty much replenished our hand. We've got everything we need. The next thing you want to do before you go into like 5th and 6th summons is you want to normal summon down your Orpheus. This is your 4th summon, and then you're going to synchro with the Genghis and the Orpheus going into the extra deck, and you're going to go into the Baron de Fleur. Now before anyone jumps at it, Orpheus was normal summoned. It's only when it is special summoned does it lock you into Fiends, but because we were able to normal summon it, because we did all of this without conducting our normal, you're able to then get into Baron, and Baron will then protect you from Nibiru, and it will also allow you to protect Gilgamesh from your future plays going forward. Obviously, throughout this entire play, the only thing that really would have stopped us is the effect on Genghis to revive the Griffin, or just an out-and-out negate on the Swirl Slime. So if you're thinking about hand trap-wise, pretty much the biggest effect hit would be on the Griffin or the Gilgamesh. Genghis. So with this, you're then going to link these two together. So you're going to use your Kepler and your Griffin, and that's going to let you go into your first of many Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh effect on summon will trigger to set the scales. Now, annoyingly, we have opened up with the Ragnarok. Ragnarok is something you probably want to be in the deck. It is one of the better scales to have. However, because we have opened him up, we are going to have the ability to adapt our scales as we see fit. You can also put Copernicus in there for a low level scale if you want to, but 9 out of 10, a lot of people actually go for the Orpheus because this can obviously pop himself as well. Now, what we want to do here before we actually pendulum summon, because we've got a scale 1 and a 3, we technically can't, is you're going to use the effect of Griffin to target the Gilgamesh. So you target a fiend monster you control, it gains 500 attack for each contract on the field or in the graveyard, and then you destroy this card. So basically the reason we're doing this is we're just trying to clear that scale out, because Gilgamesh has to set 2. We can then activate the Ragnarok. Now, obviously, if you've already opened up the Ragnarok, then you don't even need to do that effect. You'll probably just use the Orpheus effect. So then with this, we've actually got a pretty stacked extra deck. So what you want to be doing is you want to pendulum summon out 2, but 1 from the hand as well. Because we searched out the Copernicus, we're going to go that little bit further, and we're going to summon the Copernicus down. Now, this can trigger the Griffin's effect. If you want to, you can discard this to get a free draw. Ultimately, I don't think we're going to be getting this out of the hand. So sending it to graveyard is not the end of the world because we're going to be getting into our contracts. We're going to be able to get into everything else to get rid of it. Off the back of that as well, you can also do Copernicus. Depending on what one you'd want to protect, you'd probably want to send off of Copernicus first so you don't draw the card that you want to send off of Copernicus. You do have like 3 options off of that, but we're going to send the Necro Slime as the best option. And then, of course, we would trigger the Griffin to ditch and draw. So we're going to draw a random card. So Allure of Darkness. This can be droplets as well. I'm still working on the build, which is why it's not fully finalised. Now, with what you've got in front of you, you do have a couple of options. You can go into Siegfried, but ultimately, I don't want to do that yet. There is still a way of getting into Siegfried a little bit later on, and I'll show you how you can do that. What you want to do first is you want to overlay these because you kind of want Griffin in the graveyard. And you're going to go into your Wave King, and then off of the back of the Wave King, you're going to go into your Marksman Tell. Keep in mind as well, I'm just going to use this to counter how many 1,000 life points I've used. So I've used 1,000 life points because of Gilgamesh's effect. We're then going to use the effect of King Tell because we've taken that damage to then burn your opponent for 1,000 life points as well, balancing the scales back out. You then want to use the effect of Orpheus. Now, you don't have to, because we've got enough monsters on the board, you can link them off. But by using the effect of Orpheus, what you're going to do is you're going to target itself and you're going to target your King Tell. You're going to destroy both, and that's then going to let you play with the King Tell effect. So the 2 options here, you've got one option being able to revive the Orpheus from the graveyard, which will give you a Siegfried. In this particular scenario, because I've already Foolish Burialed the Swell Slime, I'm actually going to send something else. And I'm actually going to be sending the Field Spell. Now, if you want to, and you want to be searching this out as a contract later on in play, because you feel that locking your opponent out or burning your opponent under specific summoning mechanics is going to be better, then obviously you save this and you actually get this off of the Wave King, which you'll see as we continue our plays forward. So off this, what this one does is it triggers an effect to let you add back a face-up Pendulum or a DD from the grave or extra deck. So we're going to add back the Orpheus. You're then going to start making additional plays because, like I said, we've already got the Swell Slime in the graveyard. We're going to use the Swell Slime effect. Don't get rid of the Genghis just yet. If we can get to a DD Typhoon, we'll actually have the ability to bring that back as well. So we're going to banish Thomas and our Necro Slime, and that's going to let us summon out a Genghis. Keep in mind that we've already used Genghis's effect, so we're not going to be doing anything there. What you will do, however, is you will trigger the Ragnarok's effect. So if you special summon a DD monster, except during a damage state, you get to special summon a DD monster from the grave. Now keep in mind the way this works is as long as if you've got a triple D in the graveyard, if your card lists summon back a double D, you can summon back a triple D because it contains 2 Ds in the name. If it says summon back a triple D, obviously you can't bring back a double D. So in this example, what we're going to do is we're going to bring back the Wave King Caesar, and because we then burn for another 1,000 because of Ragnarok, we can trigger the Orpheus effect in hand and summon itself down. By doing that, before you go any further, you can then sync those 2 together, and as they are both pendulums, they will go to the extra deck. And this gives you your Siegfried. So this is your out to droplets, and the way this is an out to droplets is as long as you've got a set card that you can activate this, and then this can target the droplet because in theory it's not responding to that. So we've triggered off the Ragnarok. Now what we can do here is you want to link off your Caesar. It can go with the the Genghis if you want to, but we're going to use it with the Gilgamesh, and we're going to go into a second Gilgamesh itself. Now if you wanted to and you wanted to get more fodder into the graveyard, you could rank up the Gilgamesh into your Deus Mechana, but we're not going to need to do that right now. You're then going to trigger off your Wave King Caesar, which when it's sent from the field to the graveyard lets you search out a Dark Contract. So the only remaining one that we want is going to be your Dark Contract with the Swamp King. So we're then going to activate this, and we're then going to Fusion Summon. And you can banish pretty much anything you want. The only thing I wouldn't banish would be your Genghis if you can absolutely help avoiding it, because that will then give you another level 6 back. It's very, very tricky depending on what you want to fuse into, because our only two options right now would be to fuse into our High Flame King Genghis, which can bring another card back, but isn't really going to let us get anywhere. Or you can fusion into a Diarch, and Diarch isn't really going to get you anywhere unless you Foolish Burial Lamiel. So we're kind of in a little bit of a sticky situation here, because in order to get into the High Flame King Genghis, we need to get rid of a level 5 or higher. So with hindsight, what I should have done off the Necro Slime is actually banish the Griffin, because we already used it. So I'm just going to fix that now. This will then fix our end plays here, which is a lot better. So that's just a foresight with mine going forward. So you'd activate the Swamp King, you'd then banish the Thomas, and you can banish the second Gilgamesh in the graveyard. This will then let you get your High Flame King. Then what you want to do here is you want to turn your Gilgamesh on the field into, keep it up in the extra monster zone, into your Deus Ex Machina. That will then trigger your Triple D High Flame King to bring back, and that will bring back your Genghis. You then get to overlay your Genghis and go into your High Wave King Caesar. Now, a Droplet will completely annihilate this board, but your opponent would need to be able to send 5 cards, because all of these are damaging monsters. Maybe 4, because this one only triggers during your turn, but that still only then leaves them with 1 card to play with. So unless that 1 card is the absolute nuts, they're in a bit of trouble. You are in a bit of trouble as well, because if they break this board, you've gone through all bar, I believe 4. Yeah, all bar 4 monsters in your extra deck. However, as long as you don't lock yourself into DDs, you can just rank into a Zeus and then be able to gain control from there. Anyway, with this particular board state, what you've got here is you've got a card that can negate a monster effect that will, monster spell or trap that will special summon a monster. You've got a Siegfried, which can turn off a spell or trap. You've got your Baron de Fleur, which is an Omni negate, and then you've got your Deus Ex Machina, which is going to be a 4-card interrupter. Now, how does it work? Well, for those of you that aren't familiar with this card, it has the ability to, when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can detach 2 materials once per chain, so you can do it multiple times a turn. When a monster card your opponent controls activates its quick effect, you can detach 2 materials from this card, or destroy 1 Dark Contract card you Dark Contract you control. If you do, you get to attach that opponent's card to this card as material. So the way this works is the first effect you would actually destroy one of your gates. Now I'd probably destroy the Swamp King, because this can give me a constant search the next turn. You would then attach your opponent's monster to the Deus Ex Machina, giving him 2 materials. Then when they go to do something again, you can detach the 2 materials, one being your own, one being your opponent's, and then steal that new monster, so it gains an additional material. That's the second time we've activated this card. The next chain, you then use the effect again, you destroy the gate, and then you absorb that additional monster. And then you've got 2 more materials again to go again, to detach those 2, to steal again. So this is actually a very powerful card that a lot of players underestimate, because A, they don't know it, and B, they're always worried about a Baron de Fleur first, and then they're worried probably about Siegfried if they're a spell and trap deck, the High Wave King if they're a monster effect special summoner, and then they don't really even consider about this. The one thing that this does kind of miss, apart from the Baron, is that there's no like monster negator. You've got a monster summon negator in like a form of a Solemn Warning. You've got a monster absorber, but you don't actually have anything that negates a monster effect. So if your opponent had a monster effect that could like literally just nuke a board, you're probably gonna you'll still lose to that. Which is a real big shame. But they are still playing through a lot. They are still having to build through a lot. And like I said, this particular hand, we did very well, because we basically just said, you know what, we've been able to set up the Baron play, and then we were able to protect everything going forward. If you do end up using Baron, then you can start triggering it off during the standby phase and stuff like that as well. Anyway, that was our first test stand. Pretty decent. We're now going to reset this, and when the opportunity arises to show you the winning time combo as well, I will show you that. I have yet to perfect it, but basically the way it works is you need you kind of need to get the arc on the board before you trigger Ragnarok's effect. And then rather than losing 1,000, you gain 1,000. Puts you back up to 8k and puts your opponent down to a k. So we'll go from there. Anyway, after another decent shuffle and a good old cut, our opening hand of 5 on this one will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I really don't get this card. Like, this card's a one of, and I see it every damn time. So this hand, you do get hands like this, isn't exactly that great. So I will reset this. It's something that makes me consider just cutting Typhoon. Because unless you've got a way to get to the graveyard, the fact it's only going to be bringing out your High King, and your High King is only going to be more ideal during your turn, it's something you might not need to worry about too much. Obviously in the previous combo as well, if you did get the field spell, you could obviously turn the High Flanking into your Deus Machina and leave the Link monster on the board as well. So yeah, this test hand isn't that great. I mean, I could put these two in the scales, but they're only going to let me Pendulum Summon a 4, which obviously Typhoon isn't. And then these two together don't really do a lot. Like, I can normal summon the Orpheus, but it's not really going to do anything else if I don't have any other follow-up. So that's not the nicest of hands, but like I said, it does happen with this deck. It is a very thin balance, which is why I'm still working on it. I'm still trying to find that particular draw card that will let me go, okay, cool, we're now going to search. Or we need like a draw card that isn't a lore, because it can be risky depending on what you banish. Cutting and setting and drawing our 5 will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, I mean, I think we've also got, if I read this correctly, we've got the Baron combo again, which is really kind of cool. So it kind of shows you the consistency of that. So you'd activate the Dark Contract. You've also got a 1 card play off of Copernicus. So the way this works is, as long as you've got the Dark Contract, you can summon the Copernicus, send Lamia. Lamia gets rid of this, and then you start setting up your scales and making your plays from there. Ultimately, there's no reason not to go for the Baron combo when you get it, because it's just so much more protective. It's absolutely crazy. So what we're going to do here is we're going to Swell Slime with the Griffin again. Go into the Gengar. So I'll show you the exact same play, but this time I'll actually go on the focus of getting the field spell rather than anything else. So off of this, what you want to do is you want to banish the Swell Slime, summon down the Copernicus, use the effect of Copernicus again, and this one will send... we'll send the Necro Slime again. And because the card was summoned, you're going to trigger off Gengar, I keep calling it Gilgamesh, and you're going to bring back your Griffin. Griffin's effect will obviously trigger as well, so you can chain block between the two of these. Your most important one would be to protect the Griffin. You don't really... I mean, you do care about the Foolish, but you can still make plays without it, so it's not the end of the world. As long as it doesn't get Ogred, which would suck a little bit, but you also got called by. So, normal summon down the Orpheus, and then you're going to sync these two together and give yourself a Baron. You put Baron far out of the way, so it leaves you the rest of your board free to play with. Then what we're going to do here is you're going to link these two together, and of course you're going to go into your Gilgamesh. This will then trigger the effect to set up the scales. So this one, because we haven't opened up Ragnarok, is just a lot simpler. So you're going to set up the Ragnarok, and you're going to set up the second Orpheus, wherever it is. Again, you don't even really need to worry about the Orpheus, but this is just like the very basic setup that you want to do. You've got two options here as well. Is you could go straight into a Siegfried, but you kind of want to be making that rank 4. So we're going to Pendulum Summon the 2 now, and we're going to go for Orpheus and Griffin. Griffin would have the effect if you have another DD in hand, you can discard it to draw 1. I think it would have been cool if it was like, oh, you can also pop a DD on the field to draw 1, would have been kind of cool. But we're not going to trigger that effect. We are locked into the Fiends now that we've summoned out the Orpheus, but that's not an issue at all. You want to kind of try and save the Ragnarok effect as well, depending on where you want to go. So I'll show you the Burning Time play as well while I do this, because that'll probably be the best way of doing it. So again, I'll use the tokens to confirm that I've taken 1,000 damage. And then what we're going to do here is you go into the King Tail. King Tail will detach a material. Doesn't matter which one really. And that will then balance the scale. So you're both you and your opponent now on 7,000 life points. Do this exact same thing again with the Orpheus popping the King Tail. And then what we're going to do here is King Tail's effect is going to go off, and this will let you Foolish Burial. Now, I'm actually going to go for the field spell play, so I don't want to be sending the Dark Contract with the gate, so I'm probably going to send Lamia, wherever she is, on this one. And we'll go a different route to get into Siegfried rather than. So what you want to do here, again, before you start burning an additional 1,000 life points, both you and your opponent are on 7,000. You're going to use your Necro Slime effect in the graveyard to banish itself and I mean, you can banish Orpheros or you can banish Griffin. It really doesn't matter because you've already used Griffin's effect. If you haven't used Griffin's effect, then that's where you need to save it. So what we're going to do here is you're then going to go into the D-Arc, and then this is where you're going to trigger the Oblivion King Ragnarok's effect. Now, by triggering this, you would take 1,000 damage, but D-Arc makes you gain it, so we're going to remove the counter because rather than going down to 6,000, we actually go back up to 8,000, which is really, really important. Now, in this scenario, again, Ragnarok will bring back your Wave King Caesar, and then this is where you want to link these off into a second Gilgamesh. You're then going to trigger off the Wave King's effect, and this will then let you add a Dark Contract. And like I said, because I'm going to go for the field spell route, I'm going to be a little bit more defensive, and we're going to pretty much be a little bit more basic on this as well. So you then add the Dark Contract with the Patient License. So the way this works is if your opponent special summons a monster or monsters with the same card type, Fusion, Synchro, Exorcise, or Link as a DDD monster you control, except during the damage step, you get to inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent. Also, while this card is on the field, your opponent cannot special summon monsters with the same card type as that special summon monster for the rest of this turn. If this card is sent from the graveyard, you get to add a DD monster from your grave or face up Pendulum monster from your extra deck. So what you kind of want to do on this is it will then dictate what your opponent plays. Now, if your opponent plays Fusions, I would leave the Lamia on the board. If your opponent plays Links, I would leave the Gilgamesh on the board. If your opponent plays Synchros, that's where Lamia comes in to give you the Siegfried. So it really depends on what your opponent plays, depends on then what you try and summon. It is entirely up to you. Now, obviously, if I opened up the contract with the Swamp King, or if I was able to get another card to the graveyard to Lamia out, or not Lamia out, sorry, High Flanking out, then you can start leaving more monsters on the board. So ultimately, if your opponent's playing Fusions and Links, you activate this. The idea that you're making this board is because you're close to time anyway. So you're already up 1,000 life points. You want to put them in a position that they can't beat over an 1,800 monster, a 2,800 monster, or a 3,000 monster to then do that 1,000 life point swing without killing, without going into their extra deck. So as soon as they do that, they're then going to be another 1,000 down. Now, obviously, if they play Zeus, for example, so for example, if you use against Tri-Brigade, I'd probably leave the Link monster up, and then I would turn the D-Arc into a Deus Ex Machina. I call it Deus Ex Machina, but anyway. Deus Machina X, because then basically what you do there is like, right, okay, cool. So you can use a Tri-Brigade effect. You're going to burn for 1,000 by summoning out a Link monster. You're then going to try and normal summon Ram, turn it into Borbo. You're going to burn for 1,000. You can't go into the extra deck for XYZ monsters for this turn. So like it puts them under a real big strain of pressure. Not to mention that with this particular hand, you've also got a Call By and you've also got an Ash. So you're like, well, cool. I'm going to stop a search or a summon from deck. I'm also going to banish anything you put into the graveyard. I've gone Omni Negate off of the Fleur. And this would still be in play. Even if your opponent like Dark Rulers you or Droplets you, you're still then putting them under this. So they still then need to try and clear this board off. So it's very, very tricky for them to do. And it does put them under a lot of pressure later on in the game. And like I said, this is only going to be a game-free play. The only other reason that you'd actually go for the field spell is if they are so heavily reliant on a particular summoning mechanic, then you'd basically go, well, I'm going to shut you down from that. I'm not going to let you play that. There are decks that put that card in the side, but what I like about it is that if you're not planning to get it onto the field zone, you send it, you get to recycle a card that you may need to continue your combos. And then going into the side deck, that's when you start locking your opponent out of specific summoning mechanics. And if you really don't think your opponent is going to be, like if your opponent is on multi-types, or your opponent doesn't need to use their extra deck, like Eldritch or something, then you could probably just sack that field spell out, and it's a very easy side out as well. Anyway, another decent shuffle and a good old card. We'll start going second now, so we'll start showing aggression of this deck. The deck can OTK with the greatest of ease. It's mad. It still does need combo pieces, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, not a bad hand. Again, we've got access to the Baron play, so I'd probably still make that because that's the best route forward. Off the back of this as well, I will show you how Small World works. So Small World in this deck is crazy good, which is also why we play the Archfiend. Because the Archfiend, what makes it so good is it's a level 3, so its middle connector can be any of your hand traps you play. Ghost Ogre, Veiler, even Ash Blossom. Off of the back of that, you then get the ability to start getting into all of your other cards. So if you reveal Ghost Ogre, or vice versa, if you have Ghost Ogre, Ash, or Veiler in the hand, it can get you into the Archfiend, because the Ogre and Ash share the level, but nothing else. The Veiler shares the attribute, but nothing else. So when you get to the hand traps, they all have 0 attack. So apart from Veiler, Veiler is the only one where you can pretty much only search like a level that matches, because its attack and defense are 0/0. But with all the other hand traps like Ash and Ogre and that, because they only have 0 attack, you can search out Copernicus, you can search out a Kepler as well. So it's really, really cool, the kind of link plays you have here. So if I wanted to as well, I can try and get into a Griffin, but I think that's going to be, I don't think that's possible with the Eccentric in the hand. I think with Eccentric in the hand, the only paths you can get to are Kepler and Copernicus. So anyway, what we want to do here is we're probably going to do the exact same thing again. I will probably go, I kind of need the Orpheros in the hand to get to the Baron, so maybe I do need to activate the Small World. So we'll activate this Small World. We'll reveal the Archfiend Eccentric, which means I can search out either a level 3, a Light, or a Fiend, or a monster with 800 attack, or 1000 defense. So on this one, the only one I can't show is Ghost Ogre, because it's a Light and a level 3. So that's where Ash Blossom comes into play. Ash Blossom is a level 3 with 0 attack. So we are going to go into Kepler? Yeah, Kepler. So there you go. So level 3, level 1, Fire, Dark, Zombie Fiend, 0 attack, 0 attack, 1800 defense, 0 defense. So complete clean grab on that one. I think the only other card you can search is you can search out an Orpheros, because it has 1800 defense, which is pretty cool. But everything else is no bueno. I mean, you can search out Fet Veiler if you wanted to, but just double checking there's nothing else. No. I think that's pretty much it. So we'll go for the Kepler. These two get banished, which isn't the end of the world. Like, that's kind of what they're there for. And I think I'm missing Griffin. I think Griffin is the only one that I'm missing on this. So I'm trying to think how best to... No, because I don't need Griffin, because I've already got the Orpheros in hand. So I can Foolish the Griffin off of Copernicus, I think. So if we go Swirl Slime and Copernicus, and we're going to fuse into the Genghis. We're then going to use Swirl Slime's effect to banish itself to special one down. So we're going to special summon down the Kepler. Kepler's effect will trigger, so will Genghis's effect to bring back the Copernicus. Kepler will of course get the contract. Copernicus' effect will then trigger, and we will Foolish Burial a Necro Slime. We're then going to activate the Dark Contract, and this will then let us search out our Griffin. So remember, this is going second as well, so you kind of want to avoid using the Ragnarok scale effect, because your opponent takes half damage, which will come back to bite you in the backside. So normal summon the Orpheros, link this off. The best thing about having the Baron now is Baron actually has the ability to pop a card. So let's say our opponent has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards, whether they be back row, front row, or anything like that. So Baron will straight away take away 1 card. So we're now dealing with 4 cards in our way. They might have more, they might have less, but this is just a example that we can use. You're then going to put these two together, and you're going to go into your Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh will then set the scales. Again, I would probably go for the exact same scales in this particular play. There's no real reason to do otherwise. You just want to make sure that you avoid using, where possible, you kind of want to avoid using the Ragnarok's effect. Otherwise, you're going to have to try and do 14,000 damage in one turn, which can be quite taxing. So I suppose if we're not going to use it, you might be better off putting Thomas into the scale. Doesn't make a much difference, but it does let you add a card back from your extra deck to the hand, which would let you, well, doesn't really do too much. It just gives you discard fodder for your Griffin. So I'll use the effect of this. We're going to add back the Kepler. We're going to Pendulum Summon 3. So we'll Pendulum Summon Orpheus and Copernicus from the extra, and we'll summon down Griffin from the hand. We can then trigger Griffin's effect to ditch the Kepler to draw a random card. Sure. You can then leave this on the board. Because this is a tuner, this actually can be very relevant later on. So this is probably where you want to make your rank 4 here. Now, because you're going second, you can use the Wave King Caesar. So you detach material from this card. At the end of the battle phase, special summon from your graveyard as many monsters destroyed this turn as possible. But during the next standby phase, take 1,000 damage for each monster specialed by this effect. So what that would actually do is if you put... it's a lingering effect. So if you do Summon Out Dark, and you were to, like, for example, crash all of your cards, you bring them back, you'd actually gain all the 1,000 life points, which is kind of cool. So you might as well use this effect. There's no reason not to, should your opponent, like, destroy them. You then go into your King Tell. Use King Tell's effect to make sure that you are gaining life points. So you go back up to 7,000. Sorry, you put your opponent down to 7,000. So you've got 1,000 less damage to really kind of try to deal with. And then again, you're in this position where technically you don't need to Orpheus pop it. You could link it off, but we are going to Orpheus pop it. And then we're going to trigger the effect of King Tell in the graveyard to Foolish Burial. Now, we've already pretty much Foolish Burialed what we need. So I would actually, because we're going second, send the Vice Typhoon. And then with the Vice Typhoon effect, probably because we're going on the aggressive rather than the defensive, you probably don't need to bring back a Gilgamesh, which is kind of important. So we'd banish the Vice Typhoon and we'll banish... let's banish the Copernicus. I don't think I need that right now. If I do need it and I regret it, I will sort that out. We're going to go into our High Flame King. Now keep in mind as well, because we chose not to go with the Ragnarok, we lose an additional special summon. So that's where you then need to think about your plays and the routes you're going forward. So this is where it becomes very important to use the Deus Ex a couple of times. So go to the Deus Ex, that will then trigger this to then revive from the graveyard. Now it's entirely up to you what you want to revive. If you bring back Griffin, Griffin then will give you the ability to search out a DD. Now you've already used all of the DD cards that can like pretty much do something from hand. So you're probably going to be looking something a bit more along the lines of bringing it back to make the Siegfried. So it's up to you if you're going to go for Siegfried play or if you want to go for additional fusion plays. So again, entirely up to you on where you want to go with this one. Now if you bring back the Caesar, that's where you would sacrifice the Siegfried play and you'd go with Caesar and your Orpheus to go into your Gilgamesh. Keep in mind you can only control one of these as well, so if you want to use it as fodder, you have to use it as link fodder, otherwise it's not going to go anywhere. So this will then trigger the Wave King's effect, this will then give you the contract. Keep in mind as well, the only other cards we've got as contract fodder is going to be a Genghis or a Diarch. So, like, your Siegfried might have been a little bit better because we already had Swirl in the grave. It's entirely up to you. So, what we've got here is if you activate the contract, you're going to get one more monster on the board, which will quite possibly end up being your Diarch because it's 2,800. If we reverse this and rather than bring back the Caesar to get the Swamp King, so we already had stuff, I would probably just bring back the Griffin, use the Orpheus and the Griffin, and go into your Siegfried. I think that would be a better option. And then you just wouldn't have this. So then you'd still make your Deus Ex Machina, and you're still in a very good position because if you still need to get more damage on the board, you do have your Necro Slime in the graveyard. So you banish that, banish your Kepler. If Kepler's even supposed to, yeah, because it was discarded. And then that's when you can go into a Diarch, which is going to be 2,800. So our opponent's got 4 more cards on the board. We're pretty much just going to go, cool, 28, 28, 3,000, 28, 3,000. So we're definitely going to clear off all 4 of those cards without worry. If they had anything to activate, Fleur is an Omni Negate. You've got a Spell and Trap Negate during your turn only. You've got a Spell and Trap during either player's turn. And then any burn damage you would take, you're going to gain it off of Diarch. So we've cleared our opponent's entire board. We've cleared off 5 cards for our opponent. We're going to set the Headhunt. Our opponent doesn't know we have this, but keep in mind as well, to activate this, we need to clear a zone off the board. So that is something you will need to keep in mind. Other than that, you're going to pass your opponent, and you've pretty much put them under a very sticky situation because your Deus Ex has got 2 absorbs, I believe. So first effect would be by destroying this and taking a card, and then you detach 2 to take a card. Yeah, so Deus Ex has got 2 absorbs, Siegfried's got a negate, and then your Baron's got a negate. So this should lead you to game, and the fact we were able to build Baron. Yes, it's a little bit tricky because if your opponent starts playing cards like Appaloosa, like Appaloosa would be a massive hit in the Royal Jewels for this deck, because like unless you open up Drop Blitz, unless you open up an Imperm to turn it off, you are in a very bad situation. Anyway, as DDD combos are, they are very long and extensive, but let's do a final test hand going second as well. So you've kind of seen the winning time effect, you've seen the, well, you've constantly seen the Baron effect. Like, heck will that ever be as consistent during like a proper duel. It's like, oh yeah, cool, I've got 2 DDs, nice. But yeah, anyway, shuffling up, cutting up, and drawing up our final hand of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, cool. So again, not a bad hand. We can actually use the Swell Slime to get access to the Baron combo again. Yeah! Because you just go Small World, reveal the Swell Slime, and then what you want to do here is you want to reveal the Eccentric from the deck. So this is how important Eccentric is to the deck. So it is a light, it's a level 3, it's 800 and 1000 defense, doesn't match anything apart from the fact that it's a fiend. So then by doing that, you can then go back to any of your DD monsters you want. So I can then take this straight back, and I'm going to go for a Copernicus because I think it just gives me the most advantage. So Copernicus, level 4 dark, 0 attack, 0 defense. The only thing that matches is fiend. So nice and easy, they get banished. Small World goes to the graveyard. Activate Swirl, go into Griffin. That will then let us go into Mr. Gingas. Gingas, we summoned. You're going to use Swirl Slime's effect to banish to summon down Copernicus. Chain it 1, chain it 2, either way you want to do it. As long as it doesn't get ogred, you're fine. It doesn't matter if it gets stopped. You're going to send from the deck to the graveyard your Swirl. Your Necro. Your Gilgamesh is going to revive your Griffin. Griffin's effect is going to go off to give you Orthros. Wherever it is. There we go. You're going to normal summon the Orthros. You're going to sync these together. You still got Ash and Imperm. So if like, your opponent had an Appaloosa, drop the Imperm, turns it off, you're good to go. Goes into a Baron. Baron can then use her effect to pop a card. And then you still have the ability to put these two into the extra deck and go into Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh effect, again, because we're going second, I would probably do the exact same play of scaling Thomas and scaling the second Orthros. There we go. And then you're going to Pendulum Summon out, so it doesn't matter which two you bring out. You're not going to discard off a Griffin, so the only other one you bring out is the Orthros just because it is a tuner. You then overlay these. I would still make the same play because you're already down 1000 life points. So you then want to go into Caesar, use Caesar's effect, but also use King Tail's effect to bring both of you guys back down to 7000. Use Orthros' effect to pop the King Tail. King Tail can then Foolish Burial. Now it depends on what you want to send. Because we don't have a contract, I probably wouldn't want to send Lamia. Because we're going second and going aggressive, I'm probably going to want to send Vice Typhoon. I just feel that she puts in a lot of work going second above all else. And then you're in like a fairly decent position now. So you go Vice Typhoon. Let's banish Orthros for now. I don't think I'm going to go for a Siegfried play. You're going to go into your High Flame King. You're then going to turn this into your Deus Ex. This will then trigger High Flame King, which can then bring back your Caesar. You can then link Caesar plus your Deus Ex and go into a second Gilgamesh. That will then give you the ability of getting the fusion spell or the field spell, entirely up to you. Do I want the fusion spell? Do I need the fusion spell? No, I probably don't. So to be fair, if we want to try and burn our opponent out, I'd probably go for the field spell. And activate the field spell. And then what we want to do here is you want to use Necro Slime in the graveyard. You're going to banish itself. And you can banish Caesar. And we're going to go for D-Arc in this one. And then because we want to be, like, unless your opponent's playing Links, you'd leave that on the board. Because they're not playing Links and we're just going out and out aggression, you go into your Deus Ex. And then you go Battle Phase. Now, Baron's already popped a card, so you're going to attack, 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 attack. The only issue we've got the Deus Ex is it will have to pop the field spell in order to get its second absorption. But as long as you've burnt your opponent, like, you kind of put them in a bad position already. So actually, I mean, for aggression, you probably put it on top of this. But for, like, if they're playing links, you probably put it on this. That would probably be the smarter play of doing it. Because then at least you're restricting them of XYZs, fusions, and links. And not to mention that you've already done a substantial amount of damage. So that straight away, as soon as they then go to do anything, they're going to start burning away. And before they know it, they're not even going to be able to make the summons. And that is it. That is it. I would say it's very straightforward and simple, but it really isn't with DDDs. It's actually a very complex deck, but I actually love it. I think it's got a lot of really cool interactions and really cool plays as well. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope this has given you a couple of very straightforward tutorials. I would probably watch this after watching the combo videos, and then definitely do it yourself as well. Now, I know it can be a little bit tricky to try and play through hand traps, so what I will like to try and do in the future is I want to try and set up a hand trap scenario. And what I mean by that is I would put one of all of the current hand traps being played into a pile. So we'd go like this, we'd go with Veilers, and what we'd do is we'd shuffle them up, and then during the test hand we'd go, right, okay, these two are the hand traps that are going to be played this turn. So I would try to keep them secret so that I could make my plays. But at a point where I would personally trigger a hand trap, I would see what hand traps are being played. So, for example, what I would do is I'd shuffle this up. Let's say I've got a Kepler in hand, right? So, normal summon Kepler. At this particular point, if I have two hand traps in hand, I would probably be very tempted to activate one of them hand traps. So, I would then look at the hand traps and go, right, okay, well, my options are Veiler or Ogre. Personally, right now, you could arguably Ogre, because getting rid of this can really cause an issue, because then it means they can't special the Griffin. It means that off of the contract, they're then going to need to search out a Swell Slime just to get a Fusion Monster on the board. But I could obviously go Veiler as well. The only issue is that as soon as they get a Griffin down, it then makes it a little bit more tricky. So you'd probably hold these for the Gilgamesh as well. But that's just an example that I'm thinking of doing. So if you want to see that particular hand, test hands, it would be, then just let me know. It'll be a very interesting and unique way of doing test hands, but it can be very, very disruptive. I know this deck is quite good at playing through certain hand traps at certain points, and Yugioh has actually done a very good video where he plays through one hand trap at a time. So like he goes, right, well, Veiler, and then plays through it, and Imperm and plays through it, so kind of goes from there. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Do it to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, guys, as absolutely always, stay safe. And of course, happy dueling.